Hey, it's Luxury Travel Docs here today, and I'm reporting to you from the Regal Princess. Today is the new year, if you can't tell from my tiara. We are currently in Tortola, British Virgin Islands. So I wanted to report to you what cruising on a ship like the Regal Princess is like during the COVID Omicron variant. This has really been a very exciting trip for us. We have spent quite a bit of time wanting to get back to cruising, and I'm so happy to be back to it now, and I'm so happy to be welcomed back home to Princess Cruises, which is one of our favorite cruise lines. So first let me tell you the biggest, it really wasn't unexpected, but the biggest thing that's happened to us due to the Omicron variant at this time is an itinerary change. We were supposed to go to Puerto Rico in about a few days, and we were notified by the captain last night that Puerto Rico had changed their cruise ship protocols for visiting passengers. They wanted everybody who visited Puerto Rico to have a COVID test 48 hours prior to arrival, or at least within 48 hours prior to arrival. And unfortunately, the Princess cruise line is not equipped, unlike something like Viking ocean cruise lines. Princess is really not equipped to test the entire crew and passenger list of a ship such as the Regal Princess to be able to work with those new protocols in Puerto Rico. So we are now going to St. Thomas instead of Puerto Rico on the day we were supposed to be in Puerto Rico. Really not a big surprise, but unfortunately there probably will be some people who are disappointed. So in terms of how many people are on the cruise, just kind of a good segue into that, because we're talking about how many people would need to be tested. We have reportedly 1,699 passengers on board and about 1,191 crew. I have not received any reports as to how many cases of COVID that we may have on board. However, I have not heard that it's a problem as well, and we've really been watching for that. Overall, I think that the cleanliness of the ship has been outstanding. Every time you turn around, there is someone who is cleaning the areas that may have had contact with other passengers, including hand railings, chairs, treadmills in the gym, or other equipment in the gym. There are constantly people walking around cleaning, and very friendly people. In addition to that, we have really been very, very happy with the protocols instituted by Princess Cruise Lines. They highly recommend that people wear the KN95 or the N95 face mask, and for the most part, most people are complying with that, except for maybe the outdoor areas where people are frequently discarding their masks. That's the only place that I've really seen any type of issue at all. In terms of the service, as you would expect with Princess Cruise Lines, and one of the reasons we love Princess so much is that the service has been outstanding. I cannot say enough of how we have been treated by the crew. Everybody's eager to help, and there's almost a sense that everybody is eager to be back. That is from the people who are cleaning constantly, to the waiters, to the cabin stewards, and even the officers of the ship. It's really felt like a very welcoming cruise, so we've been so happy with that. Now, some specifics about the things that we've encountered during this Omicron surge. Boarding in Fort Lauderdale was a little unnerving. You know, there obviously is just a sense of anxiety from everybody during this Omicron surge, and we felt when we got here that there were long lines. Despite my elite status, we had to wait in line to show proof of vaccination, proof of a negative COVID test within the prior 48 hours, and obviously your passports. There was not a lot of social distancing happening during that process. I almost felt like I was being corralled. I hate to use that word, but corralled like you might be at Disney World, for example. But everybody did wear their masks, and if a mask was slipping down under somebody's nose, there were people who were instructing the future passengers to put the mask up over their nose. So we were really appreciative of that. And of course, going down that gangplank and getting the welcoming on board was just outstanding, with everybody there clapping and so happy to see passengers back on board. And this ship has probably been sailing for somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks now. It came over from Europe, and we're on one of the Caribbean itineraries. Next, I went to my room and met my cabin steward. I typically go for an inside cabin. I really like peace and quiet. I like a cabin on the back of the ship where there's not a lot of foot traffic, and with an inside cabin, the room is dark, you can sleep well, and you can relax well when you're not out and about around the ship. If I want to see the view, I go up on deck, and that's something that's very easy for me to do. I'm a very active person. I climb the stairs and I go out on deck and see what's going on. And so I really love an inside cabin. My cabin steward has been fantastic. Everything is spick and span clean. It is just, there have been no problems. He's gotten everything that I request, and I have a few various things, like I request a blanket on the bed, I request an extra top sheet, I request my my bathrobe, extra hangers. There's all kinds of little things that you can request, and he's just been excellent at helping us out, and also the other people in my group. In terms of the gym, because I go to the gym quite a bit, individuals in the gym really are not masking, which is really kind of typical around the US. When you're working out, it is very hard, running on a treadmill, for example, to wear a mask. There are some people who are wearing masks, but in general, people are not masking in the gym. But the equipment is spaced out with the 6 foot of social distancing between, for example, 2 people on a treadmill or 2 people on a bicycle. In the fitness studio where you would be doing yoga, stretching, spin class, those are socially distanced quite well, with markings on the floor, as you've probably seen at other gyms and other locations throughout the 2-year pandemic now. Dining has, again, just been outstanding. I had read some reports that the food was not up to par from previous Princess experiences, but I felt the food is exactly what I've expected. I'm still looking for the Curtis Love chocolate journeys, and have been having those for desserts. It's the very typical recipes that I've been used to having on Princess cruises for years. So we went to the Crown Grill last night as well, and as typical of the Crown Grill, a lot of food, very good food, and excellent service. We've been to a few shows. The first night there was a comedian, which was endearing to me because he's from South Carolina. I picked up that he was probably from the Carolinas by his accent, and of course the jokes were very endearing and very typical to my experience in North Carolina, where I just love living. Following that was a wonderful trumpeter who played with the Princess Orchestra and did a lot of swing music, and that was really a lot of fun. I think people enjoyed that a lot. And then last night for New Year's was one of the first production shows, which the production shows on Princess, in my opinion, are just excellent. I think they have some of the best entertainment at sea, and I recognize some of the singers from previous cruises, and of course they seem to have their A game in terms of the quality of performers that are in the production shows. The singers are just outstanding on this Regal Princess cruise, and I did notice, however, that the number of dancers were at least half, if not less than half. There were only 4 dancers, where typically there may be 8 or even 10 dancers at a time in a Princess production show. I'm not really sure the reason why for that, but nonetheless the show was still very exciting, and it's just, again, so great to be back to the familiar production shows and other entertainment that Princess is so good at. We did experience New Year's, obviously, from my tiara last night, and there was a big party up on deck with just an outstanding band that played such great dance music, with, of course, the big Princess screen above the pool projecting images from all over the world, and fireworks, and just a beautiful display on that screen. And of course the countdown occurred on that screen with everybody dancing up on the balcony decks, up on the central deck where the fountains usually are located. And you can check out that video that we uploaded on New Year's Day. So really just quite a bit of fun. I have to say, in terms of COVID, there wasn't a lot of social distancing. There was not a lot of masking, maybe because it was outside. But just so much fun, and I'm really glad that I was able to experience that. I expect that probably the Christmas decorations are going to come down today, but we'll see what happens with that. But overall, I think this has been a very good experience. So dining in the buffet consists of being served by the staff here on the Regal Princess, and they do an excellent job of making sure that everybody gets what they want. There's also some grab and goes, which is usually the kind of thing that maybe some dried fruit or some yogurt or the muesli, which is one of the things that I love so much. So the Horizon Court is just a little bit different than you might anticipate. I want to take a few minutes and show you the obvious quarantine areas that are present on the Regal Princess. Shortly after coming on board, it became very obvious that there are quarantine areas, and these areas are located on two different decks, the Emerald and the Dolphin decks, which are decks 8 and 9, for those of you not familiar with Princess Cruise Line. It was present only on the port side of the ship, and the reason that you can tell these are the quarantine areas are because there are signs telling you to take alternate routes. We've been on this ship enough to know that normally these routes are not closed, and these are hallways that can easily be traversed by passengers. I'm estimating that there's about 200 cabins set aside for quarantine purposes, probably of both passenger and crew. While we were on board, the CDC issued a level 4 advisory for Americans considering cruising, and the advisory told Americans that they advise against cruising regardless of vaccination status. Obviously, the decision is your own. One thing that I thought was interesting that I wanted to show you in view of this CDC recommendation that occurred on December 30th are that the quarantine areas were partially open one evening on our ship, and I'm showing them to you now. And fortunately, they were empty. The area that was open was on the Emerald deck from the aft elevators to midship. The other thing that you can see here are that the ship has areas for donning and discarding PPE, and has pretty good instructions for the crew when they're entering the quarantine areas. So I thought this was a pretty interesting thing to show you, and I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about the vaccination status of the crew. You know, maybe I will come down with COVID. Hard to say. I'm sure there are going to be, if not already, cases on board. Statistically, that is something that is going to occur. Fortunately, I am vaccinated and I have my booster, and we will see. I'll probably test myself as is recommended by the CDC once I arrive home within probably 48 to 72 hours. and I will be very careful who I go around once I return from this cruise. Hey, now that my Regal Princess New Year's Eve 8-day Caribbean cruise is over, I wanted to spend a little bit of time to let you know my thoughts about how Princess Cruise Lines is handling the coronavirus pandemic, and more specifically the Omicron surge that has been occurring over the holidays. I've shown you the quarantine areas of the ship that are from about the aft elevators to the forward portions of the ship. They are on decks 8 and 9, which does equate to a fair number of rooms. Now, I was able to access the areas that were open one evening and showed you the areas of donning and disposing of PPE, and fortunately that all of those rooms were empty. During the course of this cruise, I can't say enough about how clean the ships have been. Constantly you see crew walking around cleaning handrails, cleaning tables, cleaning surfaces of chairs that passengers may be sitting in. In addition to that, all of the crew are wearing N95 masks or KN95 masks all the time, and there were no crew members that wore any type of surgical mask other than the N95s. For the most part, passengers are pretty much wearing the N95 masks as well. Surgical masks are provided to the passengers complimentary in the room, and you did see some passengers wearing the regular blue, for example, surgical masks, and of course some cloth masks. Occasionally you would see individual passengers with the masks slipping down below their nose. Unfortunately, I think that that's pretty par for the course in most of society these days. But in general, I feel that most passengers were very, very respectful of the fact that we are in the midst of a pandemic, and of course that there's a certain level of anxiety amongst most of the passengers, knowing what's been going on the cruise ships recently with the Omicron surge. I did speak to some of the crew while I was on board, and it appears that Princess has been very good about making sure that the crew members are vaccinated appropriately with the CDC guidelines, and it appears that most of the crew joined this current cruise or this current ship, the Regal Princess, in Europe, and received 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine and are scheduled to have boosters very soon. Most of the crew, as far as I know, were not vaccinated prior to arriving with the Regal Princess in Europe, but they are now. I'm sure that there may be some of the crew that were vaccinated before arrival, but I cannot give you those numbers. But I was very reassured to hear that many of the crew had received the double doses of Pfizer and will be receiving boosters as well. In terms of how the pandemic affected us, we did have the one port change where we were unable to go to Puerto Rico as originally planned. Puerto Rico changed their cruise passenger entry requirements, asking or requiring that cruise passengers be tested for coronavirus within 72 hours prior to arrival, and Princess Cruise Lines is really not outfitted to be able to do that at this time. So instead of going to Puerto Rico, we did go to St. Thomas instead, which is always a lovely place to visit. The entertainment, we did have a few changes in entertainment. The regular Princess singers and dancers were present, but there were 4 of the singers, which were just excellent singers, but only 4 of the dancers, when generally there seems to be around 8 to 10 of the dancers. Is that because they've scaled down due to the pandemic, or were some of the dancers ill? I'm not fully sure. We did have one change in entertainment one night where one of the scheduled performers or guest performers became ill, and another guest performer had to substitute at the last moment. They found other guest performers found out at 9 a.m. the day that they were to substitute. We don't know what the illness was for the performer that was unable to perform, just that he was sick. Regarding the activities on board, in general, most of the activities were very similar. Some of the sale items that would typically happen on Princess didn't occur, or the galley tour that typically occurs did not occur, was not offered. I would say that in some ways the activity levels were pared down, but generally they were similar to what we've seen in the past. When seeing the other passengers on board, I would say that there is not a great deal of social distancing occurring. Many of the passengers will try to spread out when that's possible, such as in the Princess Theater or in the Horizon Court Buffet, but there's no required social distancing, with the exception of the gym. On the shore excursions, there was no social distancing that occurred on the buses, but people were required to wear their masks on the bus, and did so, fortunately, and I felt that the tour guides were very respectful of wearing their masks. They also had plastic up between the drivers and the passengers, so felt very comfortable in those situations. All in all, I think this has been a very good experience. I think Princess has done an excellent job of making us feel safe and feel that we were valued as coming back as customers, and that we were protected in as many ways as possible. And they've done a very good job with how they've dealt with the pandemic, in my opinion, at this time. So I definitely will be back on Princess Cruises, and you've heard me talk about Viking cruises in the past as well, and I will be joining them again as well. Always remember to make meaningful and healthy travel happen for yourself, and I want to remind you that all proceeds from our channel are donated to charity. It really helps us out if you give us a thumbs up or drop us a comment in the boxes below. Let us know what you think of this video or other things that you would like us to talk about. And if you could subscribe to our channel, we would really appreciate that. And again, anything that we earn from our social media is donated to charity. So thanks again for your support, and I'll see you next time.